So whether you like it or not, with the addition of the Evoke Elementals on Magic Arena, you're gonna have to accept the fact that Scam is about to become an integral part of the Timeless experience. In this video, I'll try my best to break down what this means for the format in terms of overall metagame changes, different Scam builds, and how to play against Scam. I'm obviously not gonna be able to accurately predict everything that's gonna happen when Modern Horizons 3 drops, since we're getting a lot of new stuff that could have all sorts of implications on the format. But I'm pretty confident that the Evoke Elementals are going to be among the most impactful additions to Timeless, so I decided to go from there. Now let's talk about Scam. What makes Hand Disruption great is the fact that it's one of the most versatile forms of interaction, since it deals with virtually anything as long as it's something that's still sitting in your opponent's hand, typically with the exceptions of lands though. Sometimes a single Thoughtseize is not fast enough to disrupt your opponent, but Grief entering the picture changes things a lot. We also recently got Reanimate, which is both the best card to cheat with the Evoke mechanic on these elementals, plus you can sometimes reanimate whatever you make your opponent discard, which could just end the game on the spot. We'll now have access to enough of the core Scam package to actually build a deck around disrupting the opponent's hand before they even get a chance to play the game. So this is a strategy that's powerful enough that it resulted in Fury getting banned in Modern because of Rakdos Scam, and Dimir Reanimator with Grief currently sitting at the top of the Legacy metagame. So I think it's safe to assume that some version of Scam is going to be a top tier deck in Timeless. The question is, which version? My guess is that we're either gonna see Dimir, Orzhov, or Mono Black be the go-to Scam build in Timeless. Now let me explain. The main reason that Dimir is the best in Legacy is because of the bonkers blue cards like Force of Will and Daze that are just perfect for a game plan like this. We don't really have anything that comes close in Timeless yet. However, I think that Psychic Frog could be the card that enables a Dimir shell, as it appears to be a really good card. It snowballs by drawing cards whenever you connect, which is a really good way of following up after picking apart your opponent's hand. It's also a free discard outlet, which is perfect with the Reanimate game plan, and it even grows bigger in the process. It has the ability to give itself evasion, and exiling 3 cards is almost a trivial cost in a fetchline format. Most importantly, it pitches to both Grief and Subtlety, which alongside cards like Sorin's Ransom and Drown in the Lock allows us to consistently evoke out both elementals. And although we don't have access to the best counter magic in the game, blue still needs access to counter magic like Spell Pierce or Mana Drain, which are certainly decent. I could definitely see a Dimir shell be a thing in Timeless. Orzhov Scam is also a deck that exists in Legacy because Ephemerate is another really good way to cheat with the Evoke mechanic, and Solitude is of course also an absolutely incredible card. While Orzhov doesn't come close to Dimir's metagame representation in Legacy, I think it could have legs in Timeless. Pest Control has become a 4-of main deck card in the Legacy version, as it hits a lot of relevant stuff, and when it doesn't, you can always just cycle it or pitch it to either Grief or Solitude. In addition, we also have Juggernaut Peddler in Timeless, which is just perfect for this deck. It's more hand disruption, it also adds a body to the battlefield, it's a really good ephemerate target, and it pitches to both elementals. Speaking of good ephemerate targets, we're also getting Recruiter of the God in Modern Horizons 3, and this is an awesome card that allows for a sweet toolbox style deck, and it even tutors both Grief and Solitude when you need it to. Another great thing about playing white is having access to really good disenchant effects such as Lauren of the Third Path, which also goes nice in an ephemerate shell by the way. This is really important because of Show and Tell playing Omniscience, and also just all the leyline bindings and whatnot. Another thing you often see out of the Show and Tell decks post board is Leyline of Sanctity, and boy does that card host the Scam strategy. So in comparison to the Dimir shell, I think an Orzhov deck is probably going to be better at playing attrition, while Dimir probably has a stronger tempo game. Then there's the mono black version. I think we've got enough standalone quality cards in black that it becomes sort of unnecessary to actually play other colors. Sticking to just black means increased overall consistency and not having to fill your deck with cards that are maybe suboptimal in terms of card quality, but then you play them anyway because they pitch to multiple Evoke Elementals. And with Troll of Hazard Doom alongside Grief, we've got a healthy number of creatures that put themselves in the graveyard to support playing Reanimate. Troll is probably probably also a card that you play in some number in the other versions that we just talked about, by the way. And then there's also the fact that Dark Ritual is best in a deck that only needs black mana. So in addition to the hand disruption and cheap removal, you can play a lot of cheap aggressive creatures to apply pressure to put the opponent on a clock once their hand has been picked apart, and Dark Ritual is perfect for this tempo game plan, since it allows for some explosive openers where you can go Grief into Dark Ritual into multiple 1-drops and reanimate your Grief or something similar. Being in just one color also means you're less soft to things like Blood Moon, which is certainly a card you'll encounter occasionally. We're also getting Winter Moon and Harbinger of the Seas in Modern Horizons 3, so this might increase the incentive to just stick to one color. So there's certainly a lot of good reasons to just be mono black. But what about Rakdos, you might think? While this was an absolute menace of a deck in Modern, I think the Timeless metagame is moving more and more in a direction where Fury becomes less and less relevant. Orcish Bowmasters is already pushing a lot of the things that Fury is good against out of the format. I could see Fury be good if there is a lot of domain aggro running around. However, Wintermoon and Harbinger of the Seas are surely bad news for that deck. Sure, Red has a lot of good things to offer like Lightning Bolt and Ragavan, and this might be enough that a Rakdos version could have legs. I just personally find the other versions more appealing at the time. I might be wrong, we'll have to see what happens when Modern Horizons 3 drops. The new Flare cycle deserves to also get mentioned here. I think these could be potentially really good in scam style decks because of the fact that you can cast them by sacrificing your Evoke Elementals before having to sacrifice them to the Evoke trigger, which adds up to a scary amount of action for 0 mana and often at instant speed as well. I'm not sure which ones will end up seeing the most play in Timeless, as they're somewhat situational. I also don't think that you're necessarily gonna play these as full playsets, but I could definitely see like a couple of copies of Flare of Malice in the main deck of a mono black scam deck, and maybe a few copies of Flare of Fortitude in the sideboard of Orzhov scam. So how do you navigate a metagame full of scam decks? There are a couple of different ways to approach such a metagame. One option is to go for the scam plan with a Leyline of Sanctity, like we mentioned the Show and Tell decks are already doing to protect their combo against hand disruption. Surge of Salvation and Veil of Summer are cards that also work well against scam, although they're not really free spells, so they might just be too slow if you're on the draw. I also think that decks that are good at generating a lot of card advantage, like the Up the Beanstalk Omnath piles that also play a bunch of Evoke Elementals, are gonna have a good matchup against scam, since they're really good at rebuilding after having their hand picked apart. Burn can also be a solid option, since scamming often costs a lot of life between like fetch lands and Thoughtseizes and reanimates, although Burn struggles a lot with Omnath and Uro, so for Burn it really depends on how the metagame shapes out. As for the overall metagame, I could see a similar situation to the rock paper scissors dynamic we saw in Modern before the Fury ban, where you had Rakdos scam that was good against the Cascade decks like Rhinos and Living End. Cascade decks were good against the Beanstalk piles, and the Beanstalk piles were good against the Rakdos scam decks. In Timeless, we're gonna have some version of scam, and probably also some version of a Beanstalk pile, and then I think that Show and Tell will probably still be the most popular combo deck in the format. And I still think we'll have a very diverse landscape of decks that are competitively viable in the format, but I think these will be the most played decks post Modern Horizons 3. As for playing against scam, you gotta remember that the way these games tend to play out is that both players end up in top deck mode really quickly, and the scam player will generally, but not always, have a slight edge in these scenarios. That doesn't mean the game is just over. It's absolutely still possible to top deck the right things and fight your way through the scamming. At the end of the day, it is just a mid-range deck that has a solid matchup against most decks, but it is definitely beatable. So, what do you think? Are we gonna see scam become an integral part of the Timeless landscape? What build do you personally believe in, and am I insane for thinking that Rakdos isn't gonna be the go-to build? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. You can also check out this video about Basking Brood Scale, and while that's an absolutely cracked magic card. Thank you kindly for the view, happy scamming, and until next time.